You've probably heard a lot of information about time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting. First, it was really good and kind of the new kid on the block that everybody had to do. And then there was some science showing, maybe it's not all that helpful, and then kind of got a bad name. Well, now there's a new study that comes out that says, well, again, maybe it is helpful. But here's the key. We have to define how is it being done and helpful for what. And that's how you can understand if it's right for you. We can't just make blanket comments like time-restricted eating works or doesn't work. Works for what? Works for whom? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? So I want to go over some of that with you here today. I'm Dr. Brett Scher, the medical director at dietdoctor.com. And the study that made me think about this is called 3 weeks of time-restricted eating improves glucose homeostasis in adults with type 2 diabetes, but does not improve insulin sensitivity. A randomized crossover trial, and is published in Diabetologia. And the title sort of gives away the punchline, right? 3 weeks of time-restricted eating within a 10-hour window versus eating in more than a 14-hour window improved overall glucose. So both time and range. They had about 3 extra hours of time and range for the fasting group compared to the non-fasting group, and average glucose for the day and fasting glucose all improved in the time-restricted eating group, but did not improve markers of insulin sensitivity. And it also said it was a randomized crossover trial, which means everybody was their own control. So group A was doing time-restricted eating and then crossed over to eating in a broader window, and group B was the opposite. So you were your own control, basically. So, well, what can we learn from this, right? This is another trial that would say time-restricted eating, quote unquote, works. But works for what? Works for glucose regulation, for lowering your blood sugar. They did not talk about weight loss, and they said it did not improve insulin sensitivity, which is interesting. So if you're trying to figure out if time-restricted eating is right for you, there are a number of things you need to consider. The first is, how do you handle time-restricted eating? So we saw in other trials, and sort of the one I refer to a lot is one published by Dr. Ethan Weiss a few years ago, where there was really no difference in weight loss between the time-restricted eating group and the non-time-restricted eating group, and maybe even a loss of muscle mass in the time-restricted eating group. But here's the thing. The time-restricted eating group ate more calories during the day. And that's important. I see that in my clinical practice all the time, that some people feel this trigger with time-restricted eating that you sort of have to make up for your foods, conscious or subconscious, and you get more cravings and you eat more. And if that's the case, then time-restricted eating is not for you. And that's important because you do not need to do time-restricted eating to lose weight. That's a concept I think we sort of fell into with the popularity of intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating, that it was sort of like a necessary component for healthy weight loss, which it clearly is not. Now, if we define time-restricted eating as, 12 hours, again, to me, that should just be normal. That's not, to me, a description of time-restricted eating. You can stop eating at 7 p.m., start eating at 7 a.m., That's just what normal should be. We should not be snacking at night. You don't usually need any calories or nutrition snacking at night. It's usually just an emotional trigger type of snacking, and it's usually not the healthy foods that are going to help sustain healthy weight loss long term. So that's sort of like a given in terms of my definition. But for those people who can consolidate their eating window within a 10-hour window, 8-hour window, and don't feel that sort of rebound need to eat more calories and binge more and have more cravings, then maybe time-restricted eating is a good intervention for you, because as we can see in a number of trials, it can help with glucose regulation. So if you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, that small intervention of extending that fasting window from 12 hours to 14 hours may make a difference, as long as it fits for you in terms of how you feel and how you respond. The second part was there was no difference in insulin sensitivity, which is interesting. Perhaps 3 weeks is too short, or perhaps it doesn't really impact it that much. That's something that I think deserves further study for longer term trials. But the other thing is, are you getting adequate nutrition in your time eating window, right? If a little bit is good, is more is better, right? So if a 14-hour fasting window is good, then why not do 22 hours? Well, I think there is a point of diminishing returns and increasing consequences. And that's because within, eating one meal a day or a very small eating window, it's hard to get enough protein for the day. It's hard to get enough nutrition and enough calories for the day. I think time-restricted eating is a sustainable way to reduce your calories, but it can easily go too far. You don't also want to reduce your micronutrient needs and your protein needs. And severe calorie restriction is not good for the long term. It's where you can lose muscle mass in addition to losing fat mass, and it's just hard to maintain for many people long term. So I don't think this is a concept of if a little is good, more is better. So we have to be clear for you trying to lose weight, improve your metabolic health, and sustain it long term. What do we mean when we say time-restricted eating works or doesn't work? What are your goals and how are you implementing it? And what else are you eating? If you're eating low protein, high carbs, time-restricted eating probably is not a good idea because that's going to make it even harder to meet your needs. If you're eating high protein, low carbs, okay, maybe that's going to make time-restricted eating a little bit easier and a little bit more doable. So the details matter. Hopefully this helped you kind of frame a little bit more around the topic of time-restricted eating and whether it could fit into your lifestyle, your healthy lifestyle that would be sustainable. We have a whole guide on it at dietdoctor.com. So check it out and see if the information there is helpful. And if this video is helpful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And we'll see you next time here on Diet Doctor News on YouTube. Thanks a lot.